everybody. So my name's Caitlin Jopp. I'm the VP of Community and Engagement here at Channel Program, and I'm super excited to be moderating today's panel on cybersecurity and authentication. So we do have a lot of stuff to talk about, but before kicking this off, I want to give our panelists the opportunity to quickly introduce themselves. So Mark, why don't you start?
Oh, sure. Thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, I'm Mark Sokol with CyberFox. We are a least privilege access and password management solution, primarily for MSPs. So.
Nice. Hakan, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'm Hakan, COO of Timus Networks, and we offer hybrid work security access solutions over the cloud, including ZTNA and cloud firewalls.
Nice. And last but not least, Rainier.
Hey everyone, my name is Rainier Moquette. I'm the CEO for Cyber Warrior. We train people and put them to work. So we're a wholesale talent provider for cybersecurity.
Perfect. Well, I'm really excited that you guys were able to join us today. So, all right, our first question, should MSPs offer their security services and solutions as an upsell or as a one-off? Mark, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I think it kind of comes down to the answer I think is yes, but I think the challenge that MSPs have, and again, this is a broad statement, is that they haven't kind of focused on their own internal processes, their own security posture. So it's kind of one of those where, as an MSP, do you have the confidence to come into a prospect or an existing customer and say, hey, you really need to be doing these additional things. And then they're actually not doing it themselves. It's kind of the cobbler's kids story. Right? They don't have shoes, and they're kind of the last to focus on. So the answer should be yes, but is the challenge of the MSP probably to focus internally first, and then have that set of controls in place and security solutions, and I think it'll give them then that additional confidence to say, hey, end customer, you need to really put these set of solutions in place. So.
Nice. Rainier, coming from your background in what cyberwarrior.com does, how do you feel about this?
Well, I think the question is much bigger than sales strategy. And candidly, I think it relates to liability and to a certain degree brand protection, right? I mean, as an MSP, regardless of if the client is paying for a service or not, there's just this mental assumption that you're the IT people. And so as the IT people, the responsibility emotionally, regardless of whether or not contractually, falls on you. And that's how all users are going to look at you. And they won't have visibility into contract terms. No, remember that you are not responsible per the contract for X, Y, and Z. They just know that it hit the fan and they're looking for you to take care of business. And I think that also it's important to consider that as an MSP, you're going to be one of the first calls that the insurance company is going to make, not as a partner necessarily, but as someone that they're looking to blame for the situation, and obviously to, see if there's a way to mitigate the liability that they currently are dealing with.
Yeah. Do you find that these solutions are better baked in versus offering them as an upsell or one-off?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's way too high risk in 2023 for any MSP to offer services that don't include security as part of their bundle.
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
Sure. And I would add to that as well as cyber insurance probably is a requirement as well these days. And they're getting only more complicated, and insurance companies are getting smarter about that as well. And they're asking more questions. The standard document a few years ago was probably a page or so, and now there's significantly more. And the ability to answer that on the MSP side and then have their customer also answer that on their side, I think is important to, and again, because it's going to be mitigating risk, things will happen at some point. It's how much responsibility lies on the MSP versus the end customer.
For sure. Do you find that the engagements to be more complex, or are there areas to streamline these processes when it comes to engaging with the customer? And Hakan, maybe we'll get you to answer this one.
Yeah, sure. Actually, all of us want to improve customer satisfaction, increase loyalty, and drive sales as a result. And in fact, the rules are simple here, such as identifying customer problems and needs, providing appropriate solutions, communicating effectively, and building relationships. And I think businesses that can manage the engagement process successfully and effectively have a huge competitive advantage. Taking SMB customers as an example, offering them all-in-one solutions will help a lot to win their businesses. And personalization is an essential aspect of customer engagement, I think. And every customer is unique in some way. And by collecting data on customer preferences, behavior, and interactions, businesses can tailor their offers to better meet the needs of the customers. And here you can use CRM software to track the interactions and manage leads and sales and automate the processes. And chatbots can provide basic support to customers, freeing up customer service reps to handle more complex inquiries. And latest AI technologies like ChatGPT, I think, provide an enormous opportunity to take all of these to the next level. I can easily imagine that it can help answering FAQs, providing product recommendations, offering 24/7 technical support, and conducting custom surveys.
Awesome. Mark, do you have anything to kind of add to that at all?
Yeah, I think it's kind of have things gotten more complex? The world obviously has gotten more complicated, and you have your end user customers, their employees or whoever's using, right? They're all over the place now. So the perimeter really has tightened down to it's essentially, I think the term is like it's at the keyboard now. That's where it is. So you want to secure that, and having that conversation with the business owner or business decision maker. It isn't about the cybersecurity and all the risks and everything. They're hearing those, but it really is the loss to their business. And really the conversation is about the revenue and risk. What's the cost to your business versus what some of these solutions that you kind of have to trust. It comes down to that trusted advisor. You're the trusted CTO, you're the trusted CIO, right? And those conversations have to be at the business level. And that really should resonate with owners of the end user, of the MSP's customer. So,
Rainier, just calling on you for a second, especially being more of an outsourced type of option for your solution. How do you find processing these types of conversations?
Well, I mean, I think that there's always the back and forth between the different stakeholders, and one of the key things that we have to consider is how do we educate the client in order to help them understand what's involved in the service that we're trying to deliver, and at the same time become an integral part of what they're doing. But really, I think help them understand why is it that we suggest that certain processes work the way they do, and speak to it from the perspective of just regular operational best practices versus the perspective of technology. I think we sometimes get too much into the weeds, and we assume that our customers, which are business people just like we won't understand, quote unquote, a process just because it's tech related. And I don't find that to be the case. You just have to say it in English, and they generally can relate.
Awesome. Well, moving on, let's talk a little bit more about privilege. I know each of you guys kind of touched on this in the first few questions, but does this really belong to the MSP, or is it more on the user admin side? And Mark, maybe we'll start with you on this one.
Sure. Well, I think, you have to kind of step back and look, what is the MSP providing? If they're providing the full outsourced IT services, which a lot do, obviously, there is a responsibility to take away certain access at the end user site, and even in some cases within the MSP themselves, as far as when an MSP loses a technician, do you have the process in place behind the scenes to account for that? Because they can walk away with, maybe they're aware of passwords and different things like that, right? So, but at the end user side, it's Microsoft recommends that there really shouldn't be an admin user at the endpoint, essentially at the actual workstation, and everybody should be a standard user, and only elevating rights and things like that at the appropriate time, whether it's the MSP taking that action in the form of technician. There's tools out there to help accommodate that. But the biggest risk there is once they obtain access to that actor, right, then they perform all the different things and kind of start to move through the organization. But that can be challenging because some of that conversation with on the back end work for the managed service provider to have to accommodate those requests that come in to allow simply just to update, certain applications and things like that. That can add, and it can add some frustration on the end user side. So that's what we see. And but the bottom line is about 80% or so, I believe, based on certain surveys over the last year or so, risk can be mitigated by just simply having standard users on all your workstations.
Rainier, what's your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Mark. I mean, you can't have even your system administrators on their regular day-to-day computer. They should be regular users, not administrative users. They should have a different set of privileges, a different account that has the necessary privileges, whatever, and that should be kept on the vault. And so when you think about that and you take that a step further, I think it's squarely on the MSP to manage privilege. I mean, the client hire you because they don't have an internal IT staff to handle data support and technology functions. They're going to have a password vault? I don't think so. And considering that there's almost never a breach that doesn't include a violation of identity to one degree or another, privilege is such a core function that the risk to both the customer and the MSP is too high for the client to try to handle internally. Unless we're talking about a very, very large enterprise, and you're, as an MSP, you're doing a very narrow thing. But outside of that, I just don't see how it would be responsible for the client to manage privilege internally.
Very good points. Hakan, do you have anything you want to add?
Privilege is a very important thing, especially we will talk about zero trust later in this session. In that concept, privilege and identity and who can do what, these are very critical things, and managing this appropriately is an important cybersecurity step. So I think for especially SMBs, MSPs need to handle this part.
Awesome. So just switching gears again, and we'll start with Renee on this one. What are the benefits of having you provide the workforce as a vendor as a service versus the MSP building that internally as their own workforce?
Yeah, I mean, this is somewhat of a self-serving answer, and I apologize for that, but it is what it is.
Intentional.
Well, I mean, when an MSP goes to a client, the value proposition of an MSP is we are in the business of IT. Outsource your tech so that you can focus on your core business. I mean, that's the value proposition. Why would the same concept not apply here? Cyber warrior and providers like us, we're in the business of training people and putting them to work. This is what we do. We're a wholesale talent provider, and so we enable MSPs to focus on their core business while we provide a source that's scalable for talent, right? And so I think that the same way you talk to a client and say, hey, focus on your core business, I think that perhaps it's a good idea for you to consider doing the same.
Just kind of expanding on that, where are you finding this talent, and what are like the common gaps that you see in businesses?
Well, so two sources of talent that we tap into heavily. Number one, veterans. Veterans are awesome. And so you have people that have been in the workforce for 10, 15, sometimes 20 years. and they're just transitioning out. And, we take those folks, we train them up, and then, they are folks that know how to work under pressure. They've dealt with a lot of thorny things that are a lot worse than a server going down. And so it's a great source of talent. And I think that another second place is folks that are in their second or third career. I've seen a lot of situations where people are over 50 and nobody wants them because they're of a certain age. And so there's age discrimination that's rampant within the IT industry. And that is, I think, really, really silly. A 50-year-old person is going to be a lot more mature, a lot more savvy in handling things than somebody who's 22. So, I think that it's an important thing to call out. And then a third place where we've had a ton of success is in Latin America. And, the economy being what it is today, everybody wants to save money. And so in Latin America, we've been able to find people that have very strong English. They're in US time zones. And there's also a very strong cultural alignment with American clients. And so it really depends on your budget and your overall hiring strategy. But I think that that type of out of the box thinking is the way to tap into, strong resources and pipeline of talent.
Awesome. Hakan or Mark, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Sure. I think, sorry, Hakan, if you want to go first.
Please, Mark, please.
Go ahead. Okay, sure. Yeah, I think it's just, if you think about everything, 100%, you're never going to find all the talent. There's such a talent shortage. It's interesting, when you talked about this, several kind of local shows we've been to, trade shows, there are people in their kind of in their mid, like it is their third career. They're in their 50s and they're taking cybersecurity training courses and things like that. So there, quite honestly, for the MSP as well, if there are those opportunities that they should maybe look at. It's not somebody just out of college these days to even just hire, right? But outsourcing is just, we do it at our company, right? There's outsourced marketing, there's outsourced helping us out with events just in general as well. We do have some outsourced development as we scale up and down and things like that. So your business moves. So I think outsourcing, and the MSP is the classic outsourcer to their end user. So I agree 100% there that to leverage those, especially that need of the shortage, because the last thing that happens, it kind of sometimes really hurts the MSP, right? They lose that key person that goes across the street and maybe makes more money or goes back to like an internal, like an IT department, kind of different from their career. I think you need that balance. I think most organizations need to have a mix of strategy should be in-house, and then certain things on the outside they should leverage. So.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's hard to find that balance sometimes amongst different departments.
Yep.
Hakan, anything you want to add?
Yeah, actually, fully agree on that because if sometimes you cannot find the expertise you need immediately, so you can use outsourcing from the vendor or a specific company like Cyber Warrior, but otherwise you have your own stuff, and then you have a better cultural fit within your own employees, so it has its own advantages. So a mix of both probably can be the best solution. And about the talent pool, just one comment on that. Collaborating with the local colleges and offering some internships to smart students can be an effective solution as well. We sometimes do that and it works.
Yeah, we try and do that at Channel Program. I know Kevin's been pushing for a partnership with the University of Maryland. So that's definitely something that I think is overlooked a lot of the time. All right, this is, again, your bread and butter. So new solutions are required for hybrid work and cloud adoption of SMBs, like cloud firewalls and zero trust network access. So do you want to kind of expand on that?
Of course. Thank you. Actually, 50% of the employees think about switching jobs if they cannot work remotely. So this number is growing. And this is why the hybrid work model is here to stay, and also for SMBs if they want to stay competitive. And additionally, there is this cloud adoption of SMBs, and it's accelerating as well, meaning that the employees can access company data and applications residing in the cloud from anywhere with an internet connection. So the companies traditionally relied on box-based VPNs to provide secure remote access, right? Is still being heavily used. However, the use of those VPNs on a larger scale is creating performance and security problems. 80% of all hacking incidents involve compromised credentials or passwords, and 43% of the attacks hit businesses with less than 250 employees. So guess what happens if the VPN credentials of an employee are compromised? Oops, we have a ransom situation. So the solution actually is to replace the implicit trust to those credentials with strong verification of user identities based on their behaviors and context. And this concept is called Zero Trust Network Access, or ZTNA. And it assumes that all users and devices represent a potential threat, even if they're inside your private network. And a ZTNA solution must also be delivered from the cloud to cover this cloud adoption use case as well. Gartner is predicting that this year, 60% of the large enterprises will phase out most of their traditional VPNs in favor of ZTNA solutions. And I expect this transition to take place in SMBs as well, because the root causes of remote work, cloud adoption, and VPN security risks are also valid for them. Actually, SMBs, after the pandemic, SMBs are being pushed to fast forward their digital transformation journey, and solutions for SMBs need to be simple to deploy with minimal effort on the SMB and MSP part, and include other key features like identity and privileged access and multi-factor authentication all in one, making the deployment easy.
Awesome. Mark, do you want to expand on that a little bit?
I think it just comes down to that, and it's been a common thing for years, is what's in your tech stack, and and if you know what tech stack is, right? And sometimes new MSPs haven't heard that term, but making sure that you're aligned to the different threats that are out there, and over time building into your stack. In addition, a lot of it's about process, really, in security. But there are obviously the tools that are out there to support those processes. And if you're aligning, let's say, on sys controls, starting to go through your technology and process and systems to account for each and every one of those controls over time, whether it's you're using that framework, or maybe there's others out there as well internationally. Cyber Essentials, I believe, is one. And so I think that is really the key. And then having that, and then looking at, okay, what technology can help support that? I think that's important. And of course, it's always evolving. It's always changing. I agree with Hakan that for the MSP, the average MSP, maybe not, everything really needs to be simple, get up and running, and simple to maintain over time. Because every time you add something to your tech stack, you're just adding more time and maybe resources to it behind the scenes, in the solutions in some cases that maybe they came from the enterprise space and they're trying to come down. I think it probably should be the other way around. You're looking at those that really support the SMB and an MSP, and the simplistic solutions are sometimes the best, because you're putting in place, again, you're mitigating that risk. So if you have 100% risk, now maybe you can get down to 20% risk in some of these solutions. And then it's a journey. Security is a journey, and picking those solutions, aligning your process to those, it's not overnight. It can take years in some cases. So.
Renee, anything that you want to add to that?
I think that the hybrid workforce, and to be candid, not even hybrid. I think hybrid is going to be the exception. I think 100% remote is going to be the norm in the years to come. And so, I can tell you that the students coming out of my programs and going into the workforce, I had a good friend reach out to me last night that's do a career change, and she's very interested in cybersecurity. Why? Because she wants to work remote. period. I mean, that is a key driving force for folks coming into the industry. And I think that there's a lot of industries, and I do a ton of mentorship, and I tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, if I were you, I wouldn't even consider a job that's not remote. Why? Because there's so many out there. And unless you're doing field services as an MSP where you need that, or maybe you've got a brick and mortar, which if you're brick and mortar and you don't have an online component, you're in trouble. Um, the workforce, especially the younger one, is going for remote jobs. And so when you think about that, the traditional tech stack is not relevant anymore. It has to be a strategy based on zero trust architectures that allow people to work from anywhere. And I think not only is it something that our SMB clients need to adopt as a business imperative, but I think it's also something that our MSPs need to adopt as well, so they have access to greater pools of talent.
Awesome. I completely agree. Okay, our final question for today. So cybersecurity awareness training is important for all customers' employees, and we've seen that tenfold. But what are each of your thoughts on this based on the increasing threat landscape previously and as we move into the future of cybersecurity and authentication? So why don't we start with Hakan on this one?
Yeah, things are getting really sophisticated, and we can no longer think of cybersecurity as an issue for the IT department to take care of. And probably the most important step in any organization now is to ensure that it is working towards a culture of awareness around cybersecurity. And this training should teach employees about the fundamentals, the risks of cyber attacks, and how to prevent them with best practices. And this can include simple things like creating strong passwords, recognizing phishing emails, avoiding unsafe websites, and having secure connections when they are working remotely. And many industries have compliance requirements related to cybersecurity, such as HIPAA for healthcare or PCI DSS for payment card processing. And providing cybersecurity awareness training to all relevant people is a fundamental piece of most of these requirements. Providing the training is important, but not enough, by the way, and the results must also be measured. Taking this a step further, I believe that the results should also have an impact on the access privileges of the employees. And as Timos Networks, we have a cybersecurity training portal for everyone called Cyber Awareness for All. And you should check that portal at cyberawarenessforall.com, which emphasizes the precautions that all of us should take in our daily lives.
Awesome. Rainier, do you want to expand on that?
I think it's pretty simple. It's not just important, it's the law. I mean, forget about whether or not it's important. That being said, when the first set of privacy laws started coming out 10 to 15 years ago, I remember in Massachusetts, where I'm at, I was collaborating with a friend who was actually the key original author of the Massachusetts privacy law. And, security awareness training was one of the first things to be involved. And why is that? Why was that kind of table stakes? It's because we all know that the user is always the biggest threat vector. It doesn't matter how many locks you put on the doors and windows. If your kids keep on opening the doors from the inside, you're going to have a problem. And so that's what it boils down to.
Yeah. Mark, any final thoughts on that?
No, I think they said it well. I mean, it does comes down to people, and and they're also getting threatened on themselves personally. So I think one way to maybe put that in front of the end user is to give them that ability on their own personal way and give them reasons to consider it from a personal level as well.
Awesome. So we're being chimed. So in closing, I just want to give each of you a quick opportunity to close our conversation with a few final thoughts and how anybody in our audience can get a hold of you if they'd like to have this conversation with you guys outside of this event.
Sure, I'll wrap up here. I think in the end, it's so many different things, so many moving parts. Get your security posture in place on your own first, on the MSP, and then also work with your customers on that. And cyberfox.com, again, we're about least privilege access and password management.
Perfect. Hakan, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Yes, and awareness, very critical, and who is managing the privileges, and we talked all about that, and the zero trust, as we all mentioned. And as TMUS, we provide zero trust access designed from the ground up for SMBs. I think this is very important because you cannot take an enterprise solution to SMBs easily. And our solution includes firewall as a service, secure gateway, and identity and management parts, privilege management parts, and MFA, adaptive MFA in a simple to deploy manner. And we have received 3 awards this year in zero trust security and network security categories. And our team is in Boston and New York. And we're a 100-channel company, 100% channel company. We offer a self-service partner portal that you can manage all your customer accounts, subscriptions, billing, and payments yourselves. And we provide white glove pre-sales and after-sales services to our partners. We'll be leading the onboarding of our partners' first 5 customers, and we'll strongly support them afterwards. And we will be in our SA conference next week, and we'd like to arrange a meeting with you there. And please send an email to business@timusnetworks.com or fill a form in our website, timusnetworks.com. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. And Renee, we'll close it out with you.
Well, thanks everyone for listening. Cyber Warriors is a wholesale cybersecurity talent provider. So if you're looking for security engineers, we can provide them either on demand on a part-time basis or as dedicated contractors where they're on our payroll but they're working for you and for you only. Or lastly, we can provide you with full-time employees. So if you're looking for cybersecurity engineering support, we can give that to you. Again, dedicated contractors, part-time folks, full-time folks, you need cybersecurity talent. Here we are, cyberwarrior.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you all for your participation today. This was a great conversation, and I think it's really set the stage for what's going to be a really great day of content. So, and thank you, Matt and Kevin, for giving me the opportunity to moderate this. They don't let me speak to the public very often.
That's not true. That is not true.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks
Thank you
everyone.
so much.
All right. Thanks, Caitlin.